In rural Louisiana, a broke father drowning in $340,000 of medical debt inherited an abandoned carnival he never knew existed. When his German Shepherd, a failed police K9, frantically dug beneath the decaying carousel, Marcus Webb discovered climate-controlled containers holding $195 million in stolen art masterpieces. His great-uncle Raymond had been an art thief working with organized crime. The paintings belonged to Holocaust victims and European museums. Marcus faced an impossible choice: keep the fortune that could save his struggling family, or surrender it and choose integrity over survival. The discovery would test whether redemption is possible when salvation comes from another's suffering. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus's hand trembled as he tore open the certified letter, his work gloves leaving dusty smudges on the cream-colored envelope. The construction site around him buzzed with activity. Hammers striking nails, saws biting through lumber, men shouting measurements across the skeletal frame of what would become someone's dream home. He'd stepped away from the crew to sign for the delivery, assuming it was another medical bill collector escalating their tactics. The letterhead read, Boudreau and Associates, Estate Law. His first thought was scam. His second was that someone had died and left him more debt. Webb, you gonna stand there all day? His foreman's voice cut through the August heat. Marcus folded the letter into his back pocket. 2 minutes. He waited until lunch break to read it properly, sitting in the cab of his truck with the AC blasting lukewarm air. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out like accusation. Sole living heir, Raymond Webb, deceased. Property located at 1847 Bayou Road. Raymond Webb. Marcus tried the name in his mind, searching for recognition. Nothing. His father's side of the family was a blank space in his history. His dad had walked out when Marcus was 5, leaving behind nothing but a few photographs his mother had eventually burned in a fit of rage and grief. Marcus had always assumed his father's family wanted nothing to do with him. Apparently, one of them had owned property. A carnival, according to the letter. The Moonlight Carnival. Marcus pulled out his phone and Googled the address. The satellite image showed a sprawling lot overgrown with vegetation, rusted structures barely visible through the canopy. No recent photos, no website, just a pin on a map marking a place that seemed to have been forgotten by the world. He pocketed the phone and stared at his calloused hands. 2 months behind on the mortgage. Medical bills stacked on the kitchen counter like a paper tower of failure. Lily's school fees due next week. Owen needed new shoes. The kid was growing so fast Marcus could barely keep up. Carnival. Even in ruins, the land had to be worth something. The law office of Boudreau and Associates occupied a converted Victorian house on the edge of town. All gingerbread trim and peeling paint. Marcus arrived 15 minutes before closing, still wearing his work clothes, still covered in sawdust. The receptionist, a woman with reading glasses on a beaded chain, looked up from her computer. Mr. Webb, how did you know? You're the only appointment Mr. Boudreau has left today. She gestured toward a hallway. Second door on the right. Pierre Boudreau was older than Marcus expected. Maybe 70, with liver-spotted hands and eyes that seemed to catalog everything. He rose when Marcus entered, extending his hand across a desk buried in file folders. Mr. Webb, thank you for coming in person. Some matters are best discussed face-to-face. Marcus shook his hand. The letter said I inherited property from your great-uncle Raymond Webb. He passed in 1996, but the estate has been in legal limbo. No will, no other heirs we could locate. The property taxes have been paid from a trust he established, but that trust is now depleted. The property reverts to you as next of kin. I never heard of Raymond Webb. Boudreau nodded as if this was expected. Your grandfather, Raymond's brother, left Louisiana in the 1960s. There was a falling out from what I understand. Raymond never married, had no children. You're his closest living relative. Marcus leaned forward. What kind of property are we talking about? The Moonlight Carnival. Approximately 12 acres on Bayou Road. The structures are in severe disrepair. It's been abandoned since October 1994. But the land itself could have value to developers, depending on environmental assessments. Why did it close? Something flickered across Boudreaux's face. There was an accident. A man died. After that, Raymond shut it down. He lived in the office building on the property for 2 more years, then passed away. Heart attack, if I recall correctly. Marcus processed this. A man died. Is there anything I should know about the property? Legal issues, liens? The property is clear. No liens, no outstanding claims. It's yours to do with as you wish. Sell it, develop it, demolish it. Boudreaux paused. Though I'll advise you to be cautious. The property has a reputation locally. What kind of reputation? The old lawyer chose his words carefully. People talk. Small-town gossip, mostly. Stories about curses, strange occurrences. I don't put stock in such things, but it may affect the property's marketability. Marcus thought of his mounting bills, of Lily's worried face when she sorted the mail, of Owen asking why they couldn't afford the field trip. I'm planning to sell. Understandable. I can recommend a commercial real estate agent if you'd like. But you may want to assess the property yourself first, determine what you're working with. Marcus left the office with a folder of documents and a strange hollowness in his chest. A great-uncle he'd never known. A carnival that had sat abandoned for 30 years. A man who died there. He sat in his truck for a long moment before starting the engine, staring at the property deed with his name newly typed on it. Raymond Webb's Carnival. His carnival now. The inheritance felt less like a gift and more like something he'd been handed against his will. A puzzle box he wasn't sure he wanted to open. Dinner that night was spaghetti with Jared sauce, the kids' favorite because it was cheap and Marcus could make it without thinking. He waited until they'd finished eating before clearing his throat. I need to talk to you both about something. Lily looked up immediately, her expression guarded. She'd developed an instinct for bad news over the past year. Owen kept twirling spaghetti on his fork, humming tunelessly. I got a letter today, Marcus began. From a lawyer. It turns out I had a great uncle I never knew about. He died a long time ago, but he owned some property, and now that property belongs to us. What kind of property? Lily's voice was careful, controlled. A carnival. Owen's fork clattered onto his plate. A carnival? Like with rides and games and cotton candy? It's old, buddy. It's been closed for a long time. But yeah, it used to be a carnival. Can we go see it? Owen's eyes were bright with excitement. Can we ride the rides? The rides probably don't work anymore. It's been abandoned for almost 30 years. But we should visit, assess the property. I'm thinking this weekend. Lily was quiet, her fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. What was your great-uncle's name? Raymond Webb. Webb is Dad's last name, Owen announced, as if making a great discovery. That's right. Raymond was my grandfather's brother. I never met him. Lily's voice was soft. Why not? They had a falling out, a disagreement. It happens in families sometimes. Like how Grandma doesn't talk to Aunt Teresa? Marcus smiled despite himself. Kind of like that. Owen bounced in his seat. Maybe there's treasure. In old places, there's always treasure. Like in the pirate books. It's not that kind of place, Owen. But Lily had already pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. Marcus watched his daughter's face as she scrolled through search results, her expression shifting from curiosity to something harder to read. What are you finding? He asked. Not much. There's a mention on a Louisiana history forum. Someone asking about abandoned amusement parks. A few people replied about the Moonlight Carnival. She scrolled further. Someone says it's cursed. Owen's eyes went wide. Cursed? It's not cursed, Marcus said firmly. People make up stories about old, abandoned places. It makes them more interesting. But Lily was still reading. It says here that it closed suddenly in 1994. Something about an accident. Marcus thought of Boudreaux's careful words. A man died. He didn't want to discuss that with his children. Not yet. Like I said, it's been closed a long time. This weekend we'll drive out there, take a look, and I'll figure out what we need to do to sell it. Sell it? Owen's face fell. But we just got a carnival. We got property, buddy. Not a working carnival. And we need the money. Lily met his eyes across the table, and Marcus saw understanding there. His 12-year-old daughter knew exactly how bad their financial situation was. She'd seen the bills. She'd heard his late-night phone calls with creditors, his voice low and desperate in the kitchen. "Okay," she said quietly. "We'll go look at it." After the kids went to bed, Marcus sat at his laptop, searching for information about the Moonlight Carnival. The internet yielded surprisingly little. A few grainy photographs from the 1980s showing a modest carnival with a Ferris wheel, a carousel, game booths. A newspaper archive listing summer operating hours from 1992. And then, nothing after October 1994. He found the forum Lily had mentioned. The thread was old, from 2019, but the posts were detailed. "Anyone remember the Moonlight Carnival? My grandpa used to take me there in the early 90s. Place shut down overnight. Never reopened. Heard someone died, but details were always sketchy. My mom won't even drive past that property. Says it's cursed. Her friend worked there the summer before it closed. Said the owner was strange. Paranoid. Thought people were spying on him. The carousel accident in '94 is what did it. Guy who ran the books for the place got killed when the machinery malfunctioned. Owner blamed himself, shut everything down. Died a couple years later. Guilt, probably." Marcus leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. A carousel accident. Raymond had shut down his entire business because of it, lived in isolation for 2 years, then died of a heart attack. Guilt could do that to a person. Marcus understood guilt better than he wanted to. He opened a new tab and searched Raymond, Webb, Louisiana. Nothing useful. The man had left almost no digital footprint. It was as if he'd deliberately erased himself from public record. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from the mortgage company. "Your payment is 62 days past due. Please contact us immediately to discuss your options." He set the phone face down on the desk and returned to the carnival research. Whether the place was cursed or not didn't matter. What mattered was whether someone would pay for 12 acres of bayou property. Even if he had to demolish everything on it, the land itself had to be worth something. A memory surfaced, unbidden. His wife Sarah in the hospice bed, her hand thin and cold in his, whispering, "Take care of them. Promise me." He'd promised. He'd quit his teaching job, spent every moment with her, held her hand as she slipped away. And now he was drowning in the debt that final promise had created. The carnival might be his only lifeline. Saturday morning arrived with heavy clouds and the promise of rain. Marcus loaded a toolbox into the truck bed, along with a crowbar, flashlight, and his good camera for documentation. Lily emerged from the house carrying a backpack stuffed with supplies, water bottles, granola bars, a first aid kit. His daughter already thinking like an adult. Owen came running out with Copper at his heels, the German shepherd's tail wagging in anticipation of an adventure. The dog had been Sarah's idea, adopted from the shelter during her treatment. Copper had failed out of K9 training for being too gentle, too friendly. He'd been perfect for Sarah. Calm, patient, sensing when she needed comfort. Now the dog rarely left Owen's side, as if transferring his protective instincts to the child who needed him most. "Copper has to come," Owen announced. "He can ride in the back," Marcus said. "But what if it rains?" Marcus looked at the sky, at his son's worried face, at the dog sitting patiently by the truck. "Fine. He can sit between you and Lily. But if he sheds all over the upholstery, you're vacuuming." Owen threw his arms around Coppa's neck, and the dog's tail thumped against the driveway. They drove south and east, leaving the small town behind for increasingly rural roads. Spanish moss hung from live oaks like tattered curtains. Bayous glinted dark and still between the trees. The GPS on Marcus's phone showed them getting closer to the property, but the road seemed to narrow with each turn, pavement giving way to gravel, gravel to dirt. Lily stared out the window, her mother's old art book open on her lap. She'd found it the night before, brought it along for reasons Marcus didn't fully understand. Maybe she needed something of Sarah's with her. Maybe they all did. How much farther? Owen asked. 2 more miles, according to this. Kappa's ears perked up, and he whined softly, pressing his nose against the window. Marcus glanced at the dog in the rearview mirror. Kappa's body had gone tense, alert. What's wrong with him? Lily asked. Probably smells something. Wildlife out here. But the dog's tension didn't ease, and Marcus felt his own unease growing as they rounded a final curve and saw the entrance to the property. A rusted metal arch spanned the dirt road, letters barely legible through decades of oxidation. Moonlight Carnival. The gates hung open, one tilted at an angle where its hinges had partially torn free. Beyond the arch, the road disappeared into overgrown vegetation and shadow. Marcus slowed the truck to a crawl, his hands tight on the wheel. The property stretched before them, reclaimed by Louisiana wilderness, but the bones of the carnival were still visible. The skeletal framework of the Ferris wheel rising above the trees like some prehistoric creature, the peaked roof of a game booth collapsing in on itself, and there, in the center of it all, the carousel. Even from the entrance, Marcus could see the horses frozen in their eternal gallop, paint peeling, some missing their heads or legs. The carousel's canopy sagged dangerously, its decorative panels faded to ghost images of their former glory. "Whoa!" Owen breathed. Lily said nothing, but Marcus heard her breath catch. The truck's tires crunched over broken pavement and encroaching weeds as Marcus drove slowly through the gates. The carnival seemed to close around them, vegetation pressing in from all sides, the rusted rides looming like monuments to abandonment. Marcus parked near what had once been the ticket booth and killed the engine. In the sudden silence, they could hear the wind moving through the structures, metal creaking, wood groaning. Somewhere, a loose sheet of tin roofing banged rhythmically against its frame. "It looks haunted," Owen whispered. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Marcus opened his door. "It's just old. Come on. Stay close to me." They climbed out of the truck, Copper immediately pressing against Owen's legs. The dog's ears were flat against his head, his body language screaming discomfort. But he stayed with the boy, loyal even in his fear. The Moonlight Carnival waited for them, its secrets buried beneath 30 years of decay and silence. Marcus looked at the carousel, the place where a man had died, where his great-uncle's life had changed forever, and felt something shift in his chest. Not quite dread, not quite anticipation. The feeling that he was standing at a threshold, and once he crossed it, there would be no going back. "Ready?" he asked his children. Lily nodded. Owen gripped Kappa's collar. Together, they stepped forward into Raymond Webb's abandoned world, not knowing that beneath their feet, buried in the darkness below the carousel, lay a discovery that would force Marcus to choose between salvation and damnation, between his family's survival and his soul. The carnival had been waiting for them. For 30 years it had been waiting, and now they were here. Marcus's hand rested on the truck door, his eyes scanning the carnival grounds with the practiced assessment of someone who'd spent months evaluating structural damage on construction sites. But this was different. This wasn't someone else's project. This was his inheritance, his problem, his potential salvation. The air hung thick with humidity and the smell of decay. Rotting wood, rusted metal, vegetation reclaiming what humans had abandoned. Lily stepped carefully around broken glass and twisted metal, her phone out, taking photographs. Owen stayed close to Marcus, one hand gripping Kappa's collar, the other clutching his father's shirt. "Can we go home?" Owen's voice was small. "We just got here, buddy. Let's look around first." The carousel dominated the center of the grounds, its canopy sagging but still intact. Paint peeled from the wooden horses in long, grotesque strips, revealing bare wood beneath. Some horses had lost their glass eyes, leaving empty sockets that seemed to watch their approach. The platform had partially collapsed on one side, boards missing like gaps in a rotting smile. Marcus pulled out his camera and began documenting. Foundation damage, structural collapse, environmental hazards. Every photograph was evidence for why this place needed to be demolished, why the land sale was the only logical option. Lily appeared beside him, her voice quiet. There's a ticket booth over there. It has posters inside. Show me. They walked together to a small wooden structure, its window shattered, door hanging from one hinge. Inside, protected from the weather by an overhang, faded posters clung to the walls. Marcus stepped through the doorway carefully, testing the floorboards. The posters advertised Raymond Webb's Moonlight Carnival. Family fun under the stars. Dates from 1992. Admission prices that seemed impossibly cheap by modern standards. And there, in one corner, a photograph of a man standing beside the carousel. Tall, lean, with dark hair and eyes that seemed familiar in a way that made Marcus uncomfortable. That's him, Lily asked. I think so. Marcus stared at Raymond Webb's face, searching for some connection, some recognition. But there was nothing, just a stranger who happened to share his blood, who'd built this place and watched it die. Dad, look at this one. Lily pointed to another poster, partially obscured by water damage. It showed the carnival at night, lights blazing. The Ferris wheel lit up like a constellation. The tagline read, "Where dreams come alive." Now it was where dreams came to rot. They rejoined Owen outside, where the boy had wandered toward the carousel despite his earlier fear. Copper had pulled free from his grip and was pacing around the structure, nose to the ground, tail low. Owen, stay back from that, Marcus called. Coppa's acting weird. The dog was acting weird. His movements were focused, purposeful, nothing like his usual friendly meandering. Marcus recognized the behavior from somewhere, a half-remembered documentary about police dogs' detection training. Copper stopped at the base of the carousel platform, where the wood met the ground. He whined, high and anxious, then began pawing at the dirt. Copper, no. Owen tried to pull the dog back, but Copper resisted, digging harder. Marcus approached, concerned the dog might hurt himself on exposed nails or broken glass. Copper, come here, boy. The dog ignored him, digging frantically now, dirt flying between his hind legs. His whines had become almost frantic, desperate. What's wrong with him? Lily had joined them, watching the dog with concern. I don't know. Copper, stop. But the dog wouldn't stop. His paws struck something solid beneath the dirt, and the sound changed, no longer soft earth but hollow wood. Copper redoubled his efforts, whining continuously. Marcus knelt beside the dog, pulling him back gently. Easy, boy. Let me look. Where Copper had been digging, Marcus could see the edge of something. Wood, but different from the carousel platform. Newer. Protected by the overhang of the platform itself, it hadn't weathered like everything else. Marcus retrieved the crowbar from his truck and returned to the spot. Lily and Owen watched as he carefully cleared away more dirt, revealing a rectangular section of wood about 3 feet across. It wasn't part of the original structure. Someone had built this later, concealed it deliberately. What is it? Owen whispered. I'm not sure. Marcus wedged the crowbar under the edge and pried. The wood resisted, then gave way with a crack that echoed across the empty carnival. More dirt fell away, revealing hinges on one side. A door. Someone had built a door into the ground beneath the carousel platform. Marcus's heart was pounding now, adrenaline mixing with unease. This wasn't right. People didn't build hidden compartments under carousels unless they had something to hide. Maybe we should call someone, Lily said, her voice tight. Who would we call? I don't know. The police? Marcus considered this. Call the police to report that he'd found a hidden compartment on property he legally owned? What would they even do? He was the owner. He had every right to investigate. He pried the door open further, revealing steps leading down into darkness. The air that rose from below was cool, dry, completely different from the humid Louisiana atmosphere around them. There's stairs, Owen breathed. Marcus pulled out his flashlight and shined it into the opening. The beam revealed concrete steps, maybe 8 or 10 of them, leading to a small underground room. The walls were concrete too, and along one side, Marcus could see metal containers, the kind used for shipping or storage. Climate-controlled storage. Underground. Hidden beneath a carousel. "Stay here," Marcus told the children. "Dad, I don't think—" "Stay here with Owen. I'm just going to look." He descended carefully, testing each step. The air below was remarkably dry, almost sterile. Someone had gone to enormous expense to create this space, to seal it against moisture and maintain temperature control. The question was why. The chamber was roughly 10 feet square, the ceiling just tall enough for Marcus to stand upright. Along the walls sat 6 large metal containers, each sealed with heavy latches. A small dehumidifier sat in one corner, its power long since failed but its purpose clear. Marcus approached the nearest container and released the latches. They opened smoothly, recently oiled despite the decades of abandonment. Inside, wrapped in protective cloth and sealed in plastic, were rectangular objects. His hands shook as he lifted one out. It was surprisingly light, maybe 2 feet by 3 feet. He carefully unwrapped the protective layers, revealing a wooden frame. And then he saw the painting. Even in the dim flashlight beam, Marcus could see it was old, possibly very old. The style was distinctive, bold colors, distorted figures, a scene that seemed to vibrate with emotional intensity. His history teacher background kicked in, pattern recognition from hundreds of art history slides he'd shown students over the years. This wasn't a reproduction. The brushstrokes were too distinct, the paint too thick and textured. This was an original work, and if he was right about the style, it was valuable. Very valuable. "Dad!" Lily's voice came from above. "What did you find?" Marcus couldn't answer. He was already unwrapping a second painting, then a third. Different artists, different styles, but all of them screaming authenticity, all of them whispering value that made his construction wages look like pocket change. His mind raced through possibilities. Raymond had been a collector. He'd hidden these for protection during the Carnival years. He'd bought them legally and stored them here for safekeeping. But even as Marcus tried to convince himself of innocent explanations, he knew better. People didn't hide legal collections in secret underground chambers. They didn't seal them away and die without telling anyone where they were. Raymond had been hiding these paintings. The question was from whom and why. Marcus rewrapped the paintings with shaking hands and climbed back up the stairs. Lily and Owen stared at him, waiting. "What was down there?" Lily asked. Marcus looked at his daughter, at his son, at Copper sitting patiently beside them. He thought of the medical bills, the mortgage notices, the weight of debt crushing him slowly each day. "I think," he said carefully, "we need to do some research before we do anything else." "Research on what?" Marcus glanced back at the hidden chamber, at the fortune buried beneath his feet, at the secret his great-uncle had taken to his grave. On what exactly Raymond Webb was hiding. Marcus stood in the blue glow of his laptop screen, the house silent around him. It was past 2 in the morning. He should have been sleeping. Instead, he was staring at a website for Interpol's stolen art database, his phone beside him displaying a photograph he'd taken in the underground chamber. The first match had appeared within minutes of his search. A painting by an artist named Haim Soutine, stolen from a private collection in Paris in 1987. Estimated value at the time of theft, $4 million. Current estimated value, significantly higher. Marcus had stared at that result for 10 full minutes before searching the next painting. Another match, a smaller work, attributed to Amedeo Modigliani. This one's history was more complex, more disturbing. Stolen from a Jewish family's apartment in Vienna in 1938. The Steiner family. Disappeared during the Holocaust. The painting had resurfaced briefly in the 1960s, then vanished again. Marcus had gotten up then, walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, looked at himself in the mirror and tried to convince himself he was wrong, that these were reproductions, that Raymond had been a collector who'd purchased these legally. But the third painting destroyed that fantasy. A work by Marc Chagall, stolen from a museum in Belgium in 1991. He remembered that theft from his art history classes, a brazen daytime robbery never solved. The painting had been valued at $12 million. Now Marcus sat with a notepad, doing math he didn't want to do. 6 containers. Approximately 8 to 10 paintings per container, based on what he'd seen. If even half of them were authentic, if even half matched pieces in stolen art databases. The number he kept arriving at was incomprehensible. Over $100 million. Possibly closer to 200 million. All of it stolen. All of it hidden beneath a carousel by a man who died alone, taking his secrets with him. Marcus's hands trembled as he opened a new browser tab and searched for Raymond Webb's obituary. He found it in a local newspaper archive from 1996. Raymond Webb, 71, owner of the Moonlight Carnival, passed away at his residence on Tuesday. Mr. Webb served in World War II and operated his carnival for over 40 years. He is survived by no immediate family. Services will be private. No mention of art. No mention of theft. Just a man who'd served his country and run a carnival. A man who'd apparently spent decades working with criminals, hiding stolen masterpieces, building a secret chamber to protect his ill-gotten fortune. A man whose blood ran in Marcus's veins. The medical bill notice sat on the desk beside the laptop. Past due amount, $47,893. This was just one of them. Marcus had stopped opening some of the letters because seeing the numbers made it harder to breathe. His wife's final hospital stay. The experimental treatments insurance wouldn't cover. The hospice care. The funeral. It had all compounded into a mountain of debt that grew larger each month despite his construction wages. Despite working every overtime hour available. $200 million would erase that debt like it had never existed. Would pay for Lily's college. Would give Owen the childhood he deserved instead of the poverty Marcus could feel closing in around them. $200 million stolen from families who'd been murdered. From museums that preserved cultural heritage. From a world that had spent decades searching for these pieces. Marcus closed the laptop and sat in darkness, listening to the old house settle around him. Somewhere down the hall, Owen cried out in his sleep. Another nightmare. They'd been getting worse since Sarah died, and Marcus knew he should go comfort his son. But he couldn't move. His phone buzzed. A text message at 2:47 a.m. The mortgage company's automated system. Your account is seriously past due. Failure to bring your account current may result in foreclosure proceedings. Marcus thought about Raymond, living alone in that carnival office for 2 years after shutting down the business. Had he sat like this, in darkness, contemplating what he'd done? Had he felt the weight of stolen beauty crushing him? Or had he rationalized it, convinced himself he was preserving art, protecting it, being its guardian rather than its thief? The rationalizations were already forming in Marcus's mind, and he recognized them with horror. The families were dead. The insurance companies had paid out decades ago. The museums had replacement pieces. No one was actively suffering from these thefts anymore. Except they were. Somewhere, there were descendants of the Steiner family who didn't know their ancestral paintings still existed. Museums with empty walls where masterpieces should hang. A cultural heritage that remained incomplete because men like Raymond Webb had decided their greed mattered more than truth. Men like Raymond Webb. The phrase echoed in Marcus's mind. Was he becoming that? Was the desperation of debt and the fear of losing his home turning him into someone who could justify theft, could rationalize benefiting from others' suffering? Morning light was beginning to seep through the curtains when Owen's bedroom door opened. Marcus heard small feet padding down the hallway. Then his son appeared in the kitchen doorway, clutching his stuffed bear. I had a bad dream. Marcus opened his arms, and Owen climbed into his lap, still small enough to curl against his chest. Want to tell me about it? The carousel horses were chasing me. They had no eyes, but they could still see. Marcus held his son tighter, feeling the boy's heart beating against his own. It was just a dream, buddy. The carousel can't hurt you. But that wasn't entirely true, was it? The carousel had already hurt them by revealing what lay beneath it, by offering salvation that came wrapped in sin. Dad! Owen's voice was muffled against Marcus's shirt. Are we going to be okay? The question landed like a blow. Of course we are. Lily said we might lose the house. Marcus closed his eyes. His daughter had overheard more than he'd realized. Lily worries too much. But are we? I'm figuring it out, Owen. Promise. The boy was quiet for a moment. Then, is the carnival going to help? Marcus didn't know how to answer that. Yes, the carnival could help. Could solve everything. All he had to do was become the kind of person who could look at stolen art taken from murdered families, and see only dollar signs. All he had to do was become his great-uncle Raymond. Go back to bed, buddy. We'll talk more later. After Owen returned to his room, Marcus retrieved the laptop and opened it again. But this time, he didn't look at the stolen art database. He searched for FBI Art Crime Division, for the procedures for reporting discovered stolen property, for what happened to people who found stolen goods and turned them in. The answer was complicated. There might be a finder's fee, a small percentage of the recovered value. There might be immunity from prosecution if he cooperated fully. There might be gratitude from museums and families. But there definitely wouldn't be $200 million. The kitchen door opened, and Lily appeared, already dressed for school despite the early hour. She took one look at Marcus's face at the laptop screen and understood. You found out what they are. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. Lily sat down across from him, her expression far too serious for a 12-year-old. Are they stolen? Yes. All of them. I think so. I've only checked 3, but... He gestured helplessly at the screen. His daughter was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table, the same gesture her mother used to make when thinking. There's a painting by Modigliani. I saw the photo on your phone while you were in the bathroom. I looked it up. Marcus's stomach dropped. Lily, the Steiner family. From Vienna. They died at Auschwitz. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with tears. All of them. The parents, the 3 children. The youngest was 6. I know. They had that painting in their home. In photographs from before the war, you can see it hanging in their living room. Now the tears spilled over. Someone stole it from their apartment after they were taken away. Someone saw a family being murdered and thought about profit. Marcus reached across the table, but Lily pulled back. We have to give them back, Dad. All of them. We have to return them to where they belong. I know. Do you? The question was sharp, challenging. Because I saw how you looked last night when you came up from that chamber. I saw you calculating. I know how bad the bills are. I know you're scared we'll lose the house. Lily, Mom wouldn't want us to keep them. You know she wouldn't. The invocation of Sarah hit like a physical blow. Marcus could see his wife's face, hear her voice. Sarah, who'd donated to art museums even when they could barely afford it. Sarah, who'd cried when reading about stolen cultural heritage. Sarah, who'd taught their daughter that integrity mattered more than comfort. Sarah, whose medical bills were now tempting her husband to become a criminal. I'm not going to keep them, Marcus said quietly. But I need to think about how to handle this. There are legal implications, dangerous people who might be involved. I can't just call the police and dump this in their lap. Lily wiped her eyes. Promise me. Promise you what? That you won't let the money change your mind. That you won't become like Raymond. Marcus looked at his daughter. This fierce, idealistic child who'd already lost so much and was asking him not to lose himself. I promise. But even as he said it, Marcus felt the weight of that promise settling over him like a shroud. Because somewhere between the oath and the reality of their situation lay a gulf he didn't know how to cross. Return the art and drown in debt. Keep it and drown in guilt. Either way, he was drowning. Outside, the sun continued its rise over Louisiana, indifferent to the moral crisis unfolding in the small kitchen. And 40 miles away, in the hidden chamber beneath the carousel, $200 million in stolen beauty waited in darkness, patient and silent, for Marcus Webb to decide what kind of man he would become. Marcus drove to the Parish Historical Society on his lunch break, still wearing his construction dust. The librarian directed him to a back room where yellowed newspaper clippings filled labeled boxes. He found the Moonlight Carnival file within minutes. The headlines told the story, Fatal Accident Closes Local Carnival, and carousel malfunction claims life of accountant. The victim was Thomas Bellamy, age 47, the Carnival's bookkeeper. The article described a mechanical failure during routine maintenance. Raymond Webb had shut down the Carnival immediately afterward. Marcus photographed the articles with his phone, noting details. The accident occurred October 15, 1994. The carousel had been inspected just weeks before. Local authorities ruled it accidental, though the article mentioned unsubstantiated rumors that were never investigated. He was studying a photograph of Raymond standing beside Thomas Bellamy when a voice behind him spoke. "You're looking at my father." Marcus turned to find an older woman watching him from the doorway. Her hair was gray, her face lined with decades of something that looked like grief mixed with anger. "Thomas Bellamy was your father?" "Evangeline Bellamy. Eva." She stepped closer, her eyes intense. "And that man beside him murdered him." Marcus's apartment felt smaller that night, the walls pressing in as he spread Thomas Bellamy's documents across his kitchen table. Eva had thrust the box into his hands with shaking fingers, her parting words still echoing. "Read them, then you'll understand what your family did to mine." The ledgers were meticulous. Thomas Bellamy had been a careful accountant, tracking every transaction with neat precision. But hidden within the Carnival's ordinary expenses, popcorn supplies, ride maintenance, ticket sales, were coded entries that told a different story. Payments to MD Enterprises. Shipments marked special inventory. Dates that corresponded with major art thefts Marcus had found in his research. And a name that appeared repeatedly, Maurice Devereaux. Marcus Googled the name. Maurice Devereaux had died in 2003, described in his obituary as a prominent businessman and philanthropist. No mention of organized crime. No hint of the syndicate Thomas's notes suggested he'd run. But the Devereaux family was still very much alive in Louisiana. The knock on his door the next morning made Marcus jump. Through the window, he saw a man in an expensive suit standing on his porch, briefcase in hand, smile professionally warm. Marcus opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you, Mr. Webb?" "Jean-Baptiste Devereaux." "JB, please." The man extended his hand. "I'm an attorney here in town. I heard you recently inherited the old Moonlight Carnival property." Marcus shook his hand, his mind racing. Devereaux. News travels fast. Small town. JB's smile never wavered. "I handle a lot of estate matters in the area. Thought I'd stop by, offer some free advice. Property like that can be tricky. Environmental concerns, liability issues, historical preservation questions. That's kind of you, but I haven't decided what I'm doing with it yet." Of course. No rush." JB's eyes swept past Marcus into the apartment, lingering on the documents spread across the kitchen table. "Mind if I come in? Just for a moment. I can explain some of your options." Every instinct told Marcus to refuse, but turning away a lawyer offering free advice seemed suspicious. He stepped aside, watching JB enter with the easy confidence of someone used to getting what he wanted. "Coffee?" Marcus asked, moving to block the view of Bellamy's ledgers. "That would be wonderful." JB set his briefcase on the couch, his gaze wandering. "So, you're planning to sell the property?" "Probably, once I assess what I'm dealing with." "Smart. Though I should mention the land has some complications. Wetlands regulations, possible historical designation, could affect the sale value." JB paused. "You haven't found anything unusual out there, have you? Sometimes old properties have surprises, buried equipment, storage areas, that sort of thing." Marcus's blood ran cold. The question was too specific, too casual. "Just a lot of rust and rotted wood." JB accepted the coffee Marcus handed him. "Well, if you do find anything unexpected, I'd be happy to advise. Some discoveries can complicate ownership rights. Better to know your legal position before involving authorities." "I'll keep that in mind." They talked for another 10 minutes, JB offering suggestions about demolition companies and land surveyors, all perfectly reasonable. But beneath the friendly exterior, Marcus sensed calculation. This wasn't a courtesy visit. After JB left, Marcus immediately called Tommy Arsenault. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "I just had a visit from Jean-Baptiste Devereaux." "Ring any bells?" Tommy was quiet for a moment. "J.B. Devereaux? The lawyer?" "His grandfather was Maurice Devereaux." "Jesus, Marcus." Tommy's voice dropped. "What did he want?" "To know if I'd found anything at the carnival." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. But Tommy, he knows. Somehow he knows something's there." "Listen to me carefully," Tommy said. "The Devereaux family has connections in this town. Deep connections. Some people say they still have influence over parts of the sheriff's department. If they're interested in that property, you need federal help." Marcus looked at the stolen art database still open on his laptop. "I think I know who to call." Special Agent Diana Ortega arrived 3 days later with a team of 4. Marcus watched from his window as they pulled up in 2 unmarked vehicles, professional and efficient. He'd spent those 3 days in a state of heightened anxiety, jumping at every sound, checking over his shoulder, aware that J.B. Devereaux's friendly visit had been a warning shot. Diana was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 40s, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that missed nothing. She shook his hand firmly at the door. "Mr. Webb, thank you for contacting us. I wasn't sure you'd come. Art crime isn't always our highest priority," she admitted. "But when someone calls about a potential connection to the Devereaux Syndicate and mentions World War II-era thefts, we pay attention." Marcus had sent her photographs of 3 paintings, along with Thomas Bellamy's ledgers. Enough to prove he wasn't wasting her time. Not enough to fully expose himself until he understood his legal position. Now, sitting in his small living room while her team waited outside, Diana laid out the reality with clinical precision. "First, the good news. Based on what you've shown me, you've committed no crime. You inherited the property legally, discovered the hidden chamber, and immediately contacted federal authorities. That puts you in the clear." Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "And the bad news? The art has to be returned to its rightful owners or their heirs. Under federal and international law, stolen property doesn't transfer ownership no matter how much time has passed. You have no legal claim to it." He'd known this was coming, but hearing it stated so definitively still felt like a door closing. "What about a finder's fee?" Diana's expression softened slightly. "The FBI doesn't pay finder's fees for stolen property. However, some museums and families offer rewards for recovered pieces. Based on preliminary assessment, you might receive somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 total." $40,000, maybe $60,000, against $340,000 in debt. "That's not much," Marcus said quietly. "No, it's not. I'm sorry." Diana leaned forward, her voice gentler. "I know your situation, Mr. Webb. I pulled your financial records, it's standard procedure. I can see what you're facing. But the law doesn't account for individual hardship when it comes to stolen property. Can't. Even when the original owners are dead? Many are, yes, but their descendants aren't. Museums that represent cultural heritage aren't. The communities these pieces were stolen from aren't." She paused. "Can I tell you about one of the paintings? The Modigliani portrait?" Marcus nodded, though something in him wanted to refuse, to stay ignorant of the human details. The Steiner family, David and Rachel Steiner, their 3 children, Sarah, Jacob, and Ruth. Ruth was 6 years old when the Nazis came. They were taken to Auschwitz in 1942. David's younger brother survived because he'd immigrated to America in 1936. He spent the rest of his life searching for any trace of his family. That portrait was painted of his mother. It's the only image of her that exists. Marcus thought of Owen at 6, vulnerable and innocent, of losing everything, everyone, having nothing left but the hope of finding one painting that proved your family had existed. "The brother's grandson lives in New York now," Diana continued. "He's a professor of art history. He's never seen his great-grandmother's portrait except in pre-war photographs. When I called to tell him we might have located it, he cried." The words landed like stones in Marcus's chest. He'd been thinking of the paintings as objects, as solutions to his financial crisis. but they were pieces of people's souls, stolen fragments of destroyed lives. I understand what you're telling me, Marcus said, but understanding doesn't pay my mortgage. It doesn't feed my kids. I know. Diana's voice held genuine sympathy. And I wish I could tell you there's a legal way for you to benefit more from this discovery. But there isn't. The best I can offer is immunity, a modest finder's fee from some families, and the knowledge that you're doing the right thing. The right thing doesn't keep a roof over my children's heads. No, it doesn't. Diana stood, walked to the window, looked out at her team waiting below. Can I tell you something off the record? Marcus nodded. My grandmother's family lost everything during the Mexican Revolution. Artifacts, documents, heirlooms that had been passed down for generations. Some of those pieces turned up in private collections years later. My grandmother tried to get them back, but by then the legal owners were people who'd bought them in good faith. She died never seeing those pieces again. Diana turned back to face him. I became an art crimes investigator because I believe cultural heritage matters. That these objects aren't just valuable, they're memory, identity, connection to the past. When they're stolen, something irreplaceable is lost. When they're recovered, something precious is restored. That's easy to say when you're not the one drowning in debt. You're right. It is. She sat back down across from him. I can't pretend to know what you're facing, but I can tell you that doing the wrong thing for the right reasons still damages you. I've seen people try to keep stolen art, convince themselves they deserve it. The guilt destroys them eventually. Marcus thought of Raymond, dying alone in that Carnival office. Of Eva Bellamy, broken by the weight of secrets and violence. Of the curse that wasn't supernatural but psychological, the corrosive effect of ill-gotten gains. When do we do this? He asked. We can secure the collection today. I'll need you to take us to the site, show us the chamber. We'll catalog everything, photograph it in situ, then transport it to a secure facility. And then begins the process of identifying rightful owners and arranging restitution. Could take months, even years for some pieces. But you'll be clear of it. Your part will be done. Done. Free of the temptation, free of the choice, but also free of any chance that 200 million in stolen art could save his family. Lily appeared in the doorway home from school. She looked at Diana, at her father, and seemed to understand immediately what was happening. You're the FBI agent? I am. Diana Ortega. Lily crossed the room and sat beside her father. Are you here to take the paintings back to where they belong? Yes. Good. Lily's hand found Marcus's, squeezed it. That's what we want too. Marcus looked at his daughter. This fierce, moral child who'd already lost so much, and felt something shift inside him. Maybe doing the right thing wouldn't pay his bills. Maybe it wouldn't solve his problems. But it would show his children that integrity mattered more than survival. That some legacies were worth breaking, and others worth building. Let's go, Marcus said. I'll show you where Raymond hid them. Diana stood, but her expression held a question. Mr. Webb, before we go, has anyone else shown interest in the property? Asked questions about what you might have found? Marcus thought of J.B. Devereaux's carefully casual inquiries. A lawyer came by, Jean-Baptiste Devereaux. Diana's jaw tightened. When? 2 days ago. She pulled out her phone immediately. We need to move now. If the Devereaux family knows you found something, we may not have much time before they escalate. Escalate to what? Diana met his eyes. To whatever it takes to claim what they believe is theirs. The FBI had taken the paintings 3 days ago. Marcus had watched them catalog each piece, photograph the chamber, seal everything in evidence containers. Diana had been professional, thorough, and sympathetic. None of it had made the loss feel any less devastating. Now he sat in his living room, staring at a letter that had arrived that morning. The return address read, Dr. Miriam Kessler, Institute for Holocaust Art Recovery, New York. He'd been putting off opening it, knowing somehow that whatever was inside would make everything harder. But Lily was at school, Owen at a friend's house, and Marcus had no more excuses. The letter was handwritten, the script elegant and precise. Dear Mr. Webb, Special Agent Ortega informed me that you were instrumental in the recovery of the Steiner family portrait. I hope you will forgive my presumption in writing to you directly, but I felt compelled to share something that the official reports cannot convey. I knew David Steiner. He was my mentor, my friend, and in many ways the reason I dedicated my life to recovering stolen art. David spent 60 years searching for any remnant of his family. He never found them. What the Nazis didn't destroy, time and silence did. But he never stopped hoping for the portrait. It was painted in 1935 by Amedeo Modigliani. A small work, but exquisite. David's mother, Esther, had saved for 2 years to commission it. In the old photographs of their Vienna apartment, you can see it hanging above the piano. David remembered his mother playing beneath that portrait, his father reading to the children in chairs positioned to face it. It was the heart of their home. When I told David, a month before he died, that we had traced the portrait to Louisiana but couldn't confirm its location, he wept. He said, "Miriam, I don't need to own it. I just need to know it survived. That something of my mother exists in this world besides my failing memory." He died without that certainty. But because of you, his grandson will see his great-grandmother's face. Will know she was real, was loved, was beautiful enough that someone painted her portrait. I wonder if you can understand what that means. Marcus set the letter down, his hands shaking. He understood more than Dr. Kessler knew. He understood that he'd been standing in that underground chamber calculating how many months of mortgage payments each painting represented. He'd been seeing price tags where David Steiner had seen his mother's face. The phone rang. Marcus almost didn't answer, but the number was local. "Mr. Webb? This is Dr. Miriam Kessler. I hope my letter arrived." Her voice was gentle, cultured, carrying an accent he couldn't quite place. "I just finished reading it. I'm in Louisiana. I flew in yesterday. I was hoping we might meet. Would you have time for coffee this afternoon?" Marcus thought of all the reasons to refuse. He didn't need more guilt, more human faces attached to the paintings he'd briefly considered keeping. But something in her voice made refusal impossible. "There's a cafe on Main Street. 2 o'clock? I'll be there. Thank you, Mr. Webb." Dr. Miriam Kessler was smaller than he'd imagined, elderly and elegant, with white hair and eyes that held decades of witnessed sorrow. She was already seated when Marcus arrived, 2 cups of tea on the table. "Mr. Webb." She stood to greet him. "Thank you for meeting me." They sat, and for a moment neither spoke. Finally, Miriam pulled a photograph from her bag and slid it across the table. The image was black and white, faded with age. It showed a family in an ornate apartment. Parents, 3 children, all dressed formally. And there, visible on the wall behind them, was the Modigliani portrait. "That's them," Miriam said softly. "The Steiners. Vienna. 1937. 1 year before Kristallnacht." Marcus studied the faces. The father with his proud bearing, the mother's gentle smile. The children, 2 boys and a girl, the youngest maybe 6 or 7. "Ruth," Miriam pointed to the little girl. "The youngest. She loved to dance, according to David. Used to perform for the family in that very room, beneath her grandmother's portrait." Marcus couldn't speak. He was seeing Owen's face in Ruth's, imagining his son dancing in their small apartment, unaware that everything could be stolen, destroyed, erased. "They were taken in April 1942, Miriam continued. "The Nazis emptied their apartment within days. Furniture, artwork, personal belongings, all of it catalogued and redistributed. The portrait ended up in the hands of a Nazi officer. After the war, it moved through various collections, always sold quietly, always with falsified provenance." "How did it end up in Louisiana?" "Your great-uncle had connections to a smuggling network that specialized in stolen art. We believe he acquired it in the late 1980s, possibly from a dealer in Paris. He was careful, kept it hidden, never tried to sell it. Perhaps he knew how dangerous it was to possess." Marcus thought of Raymond's paranoid final years. Or perhaps he felt guilty. Perhaps. Miriam took a sip of tea. "Agent Ortega told me about your situation. The medical debt, your wife's passing. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. I imagine the temptation must have been overwhelming. All that value hidden beneath a carousel. Enough to solve every problem. Marcus met her eyes. It was. But you called the FBI anyway. My daughter wouldn't let me do anything else. She researched the Steiner family, learned what happened to them. She said her mother would have wanted us to do the right thing. Miriam's eyes glistened. Your daughter is wise, and your wife raised her well. Sarah believed art belonged to everyone. She used to take the kids to museums even when we could barely afford gas to get there. She said beauty was a human right. She was correct. Miriam pulled out another photograph, this one more recent. This is Daniel Steiner, David's grandson, Ruth's great-nephew. He's a professor at Columbia. When I told him about the portrait, he asked me to thank you personally. The man in the photo had Ruth's eyes. Marcus could see the family resemblance spanning generations, connecting the living to the murdered. You didn't have to come all this way to thank me, Marcus said. I didn't come just to thank you. I came to tell you that what you did matters. That returning stolen art isn't just about property or law. It's about restoring dignity to the dead and connection to the living. It's about saying that some things are more important than money. Marcus felt tears threatening. It doesn't feel important. It feels like I gave away my family's future. Did you? Miriam's voice was gentle but firm. Or did you show your children that integrity exists, that some principles matter more than comfort? What legacy are you truly leaving them, Mr. Webb? Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. J.B. Devereaux just showed up at your construction site, asking questions. Be careful. Marcus showed Miriam the message. Her expression darkened. The Devereaux family knows about the paintings? They suspect. J.B. came to my apartment right before I called the FBI. Then you need to be very careful. These families don't forget, and they don't forgive. She paused. But you also need to understand something. By returning those paintings, you've taken away their power. For generations, the Devereaux family has profited from theft and violence. Raymond Webb was part of that system. But you've broken the cycle. It doesn't feel broken. It feels like I'm still paying for Raymond's sins. Perhaps you are. But you're paying with truth instead of silence. With justice instead of complicity. Miriam gathered her photographs. The Steiner portrait will go to the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York. Daniel will see his great-grandmother's face. Future generations will know the Steiners existed, were loved, created beauty. That's worth more than money, Mr. Webb, even if it's harder to believe on the days when the bills come due. After she left, Marcus sat alone in the cafe, thinking about legacies and choices, about Raymond dying in isolation, surrounded by stolen beauty that brought him no peace, about Eva Bellamy, destroyed by proximity to blood money, about the Steiner family, erased by hatred but now being remembered through recovered art, about his own children, watching him choose between easy money and hard integrity. His phone buzzed again. This time it was J.B. Devereaux directly. Mr. Webb, we should talk. There are matters concerning your inheritance that require discussion. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. I strongly suggest you attend. The friendly mask was slipping, the veiled threats becoming explicit. Marcus typed a response. I'll be there. But as he sent it, he knew he wouldn't be going alone. Tommy would be with him. And maybe, just maybe, Diana Ortega would be listening when JB revealed exactly how far the Devereaux family was willing to go to reclaim what they believed was theirs. The war over Raymond's legacy wasn't finished. It was just beginning. Eva Bellamy's message arrived at midnight. Come to the carnival. Tomorrow. Dawn. Bring your deputy friend. I have proof. Marcus showed the text to Tommy over breakfast at the diner. His friend read it twice, his cop instincts warring with concern. Eva's not stable, Marcus. Everyone knows that. Everyone thought she was crazy about her father's murder too, until the FBI confirmed Raymond was running stolen art. Tommy sighed. What kind of proof could she have? Only one way to find out. They arrived at the carnival grounds as the sun broke over the tree line, painting the rusted rides in shades of gold and orange. Eva's car was already there, parked near the old office building Marcus hadn't explored before. She met them at the door, her eyes bright with an intensity that might have been madness or vindication. "You came. You said you had proof," Marcus said. "I've had it for 30 years. No one would listen." She unlocked the office door. "Now they'll have to." Inside, the walls were covered in photographs, documents, newspaper clippings connected by red string like something from a conspiracy theorist's nightmare. But as Marcus's eyes adjusted, he saw the meticulous organization, the careful documentation. "This is my father's work," Eva said, gesturing to one section. "These are my additions." Tommy stepped closer, examining a ledger page pinned to the wall. "This shows 2 sets of books. Raymond kept one ledger for the Devereaux Syndicate, another for himself." Eva's voice shook. He was stealing from the thieves, holding back the most valuable pieces, planning to disappear. Marcus studied the evidence. Dates, amounts, coded references that matched patterns in Thomas Bellamy's official ledgers. "My father discovered it," Eva continued. "Found Raymond's private records. Confronted him about it." Her voice broke. "Raymond told Maurice Devereaux that my father was going to the police. That's why they killed him. Staged it as a carousel accident." "Can you prove the murder?" Tommy asked gently. Eva pulled a folder from a drawer, hands trembling. Inside were photographs, the carousel the day after the accident, close-ups showing details that didn't match the official report, and a handwritten note in Raymond's distinctive script. Marcus read it aloud. "Maurice ordered it. Said Thomas knew too much. I didn't think he'd actually. God forgive me. I should have warned him. Should have stopped it. But I was afraid." "Where did you get this?" Tommy's voice was sharp. "Raymond sent it to my mother 2 weeks before he died. She burned it. Or tried to. I pulled it from the fireplace, hid it." Eva's eyes were fierce. "Everyone said I was crazy, that I imagined things, created false memories. But I knew what I saw. I knew what happened." Marcus felt the weight of Raymond's confession in his hands. Murder. Not just theft, but actual murder to protect the stolen art. "There's more," Eva said. "Raymond's journal mentions a second hiding place. Insurance, he called it. Pieces he kept back from everyone, even the Devereaux family." Tommy looked at Marcus. "You thinking what I'm thinking? That we're in deeper than we thought," Marcus said quietly. Eva's smile was bitter. "Welcome to the curse, Mr. Webb. Once you touch Raymond's blood money, it never lets you go." Marcus sat alone in his apartment that night. Raymond's journal spread before him like evidence of his own potential future. The pages were brittle. The ink faded in places, but the words were clear enough. Too clear. June 1947. The estate was abandoned. Windows broken, door hanging open. Inside, paintings stacked against walls like forgotten children. Who would miss them? Who would even know? I took 3. Told myself I was preserving them, saving them from looters. Marcus recognized the rationalization immediately. It was the same voice that had whispered in his own mind when he'd first seen the paintings. The families are dead anyway. No one's actively suffering. He turned the page. September 1952. Maurice says the Paris job is clean. Museum's insurance will cover it. The paintings go into private collections where they'll be protected, appreciated. We're not destroying art. We're relocating it. That's all. The mental gymnastics were familiar. Marcus had performed similar ones standing in that underground chamber, calculating mortgage payments against Holocaust victims' portraits. Different crimes, same corrupted logic. January 1963 started the Carnival as a front. Morris's idea. Perfect cover for moving merchandise. Families come, children laugh on the rides, and beneath it all were running pieces worth millions. Sometimes I wonder what my brother would think. But he left, didn't he? Left me to make my own way. Marcus thought of his own father, who'd abandoned him at 5. Of growing up poor, watching his mother work herself to exhaustion. Of the resentment that still burned sometimes, the feeling that the world owed him something for that childhood of poverty and absence. Raymond had felt it too, used it to justify every crime that followed. October 1973, took the Modigliani today. Small piece, but Maurice says it's valuable. Jewish family, fled before the war. Painting's been in a private collection for 30 years. The current owner doesn't even know its real provenance. I'm not stealing from victims. I'm stealing from other thieves. Marcus closed his eyes. He'd used similar logic. The insurance companies already paid out. Museums have other pieces. I'm not really hurting anyone. But that was the lie, wasn't it? The same lie Raymond had told himself until it became truth in his own mind. Until he could look at a portrait of a murdered woman and see only dollar signs. The later entries grew darker, more paranoid. April 1989, Maurice wants the Chagall. Says it's worth $12 million. But I'm keeping this one. Insurance. The Devereaux family thinks they own me, but I'm not their puppet. I'm building my own collection. When the time comes, I'll disappear. Start over somewhere they can't find me. Marcus felt a chill reading those words. Raymond planning betrayal, hoarding pieces in secret, driven by greed that had metastasized into something pathological. He'd been a smart man, a World War II veteran, someone who'd once had principles. But each small compromise had eroded those principles until nothing remained but rationalization and paranoia. June 1994, Thomas is asking questions. Noticed discrepancies in the books. I told him it's complicated accounting, Carnival business mixed with other ventures. But he's persistent. Shows me entries that don't match Morris's records. Says some pieces are missing from the inventory. I need to think. Need to figure out how to handle this without. The entry ended there. The next one was dated 3 weeks later. July 1994. Can't sleep. Keep seeing Thomas's face. Keep hearing Morris's voice on the phone. He's a problem that needs solving. I should have warned him. Should have told him to drop it, to stop asking questions. But I was afraid. Afraid Maurice would suspect me, would discover my private collection. So I said nothing. And now Thomas is asking more questions, threatening to go to the authorities. Marcus's hands shook as he turned to the final entries. October 1994. Thomas is dead. They staged it as a carousel accident. His daughter was there. Saw it happen. Eva. Little Eva with her bright eyes and her father's smile. What have I done? What have I become? I shut down the carnival. Can't look at those rides anymore without seeing Thomas, without hearing the machinery that killed him. Maurice is furious. Says I'm drawing attention, making people suspicious. But I don't care. I can't do this anymore. November 1994. Maurice wants the art. All of it. Says it's time to liquidate, that the carnival closure is making authorities curious. I told him the pieces are already sold, scattered to different buyers. He doesn't believe me. I can hear it in his voice. He knows I'm holding back. I moved my private collection to the cemetery, to my sister's grave, where angels weep for the forgotten. If Maurice comes for me, at least these pieces will be safe. At least something will survive. The journal ended there. Raymond had died 18 months later, alone in the carnival office, his secrets buried with him. Marcus looked up to find Lily standing in the doorway, watching him. You've been reading for hours, she said quietly. I needed to understand him, Raymond. And do you? Marcus thought about that. I understand how it happens, how a desperate man convinces himself that theft isn't really theft, that victims aren't really victims. How each crime makes the next one easier until you can't remember who you were before. Lily sat beside him. You're not him, Dad. How do you know? I was standing in that chamber doing the same math he did, calculating what I could justify taking. But you didn't take it. You called the FBI. Because you wouldn't let me do anything else. No, Lily said firmly. Because you're not Raymond. He made his choices alone, in secret. You involved us. You let me research, let me see the victims as real people. Raymond isolated himself from everyone who might have held him accountable. You didn't. Marcus pulled his daughter close, felt her warmth against his side. I'm scared, Lily. The bills aren't going away. JB Devereaux is getting more aggressive. And now Eva wants us to find Raymond's second cache. Why would we do that? To prove the murder. The pieces Raymond held back. If we find them with his confession, it's evidence that the Devereaux family ordered Thomas Bellamy's death. And then what? Marcus thought of Eva's broken life, of 30 years spent dismissed as crazy, of Diana Ortega's dedication to returning stolen art, of Dr. Kessler's gentle insistence that truth mattered more than comfort. Then maybe we finish what Raymond started. Not the theft, the truth. Maybe we give Eva her vindication and the Steiner family their great-grandmother's portrait. Maybe we show the world that some curses can be broken. His phone buzzed. A text from Diana. Raymond's journal mentions St. Augustine Cemetery. Permission to search? Marcus had photographed the journal pages, sent them to her. Now the FBI wanted to find the second cache, wanted to close the loop on decades of crime. He typed back, "Yes, but I want to be there." Lily read over his shoulder. "The cemetery? That's where Raymond's sister is buried. Where your grandmother is buried. Family plot. Where angels weep for the forgotten." Marcus stood, feeling the weight of Raymond's legacy settling over his shoulders. Tomorrow we find out if Raymond left us redemption or just more guilt. What if it's more art? More millions? Then I make the same choice I made before. I give it back. Because the alternative is becoming Raymond, and I'd rather drown in debt than drown in what he became. Lily hugged him fiercely. Mom would be proud of you. Marcus wasn't sure about that. Sarah would have been proud of him never being tempted in the first place. But maybe she'd understand that redemption wasn't about never falling. It was about climbing back up when you realized how close to the edge you'd gotten. Outside, Louisiana darkness pressed against the windows. Somewhere, JB Devereaux was planning his next move. Eva Bellamy was finally getting the validation she'd sought for 30 years. And in a cemetery on the edge of town, Raymond's final secrets waited to be unearthed. The curse was almost broken. Just one more truth to uncover. One more choice to make. Marcus stood at the Webb family plot as dawn broke over St. Augustine Cemetery. Tommy was beside him, Diana and her team positioned nearby. Eva waited by the angel statue, her face tight with decades of waiting. Copper sniffed around the base of the monument, then began digging at the exact spot where the angel's tears, weathered stone streaks, pointed downward. Here, Marcus said. They excavated carefully. Beneath 3 feet of earth, they found a sealed vault. Inside were more paintings and a waterproof container holding documents. Photographs of Thomas Bellamy's body, inconsistencies in the accident report, and Raymond's full confession detailing how Maurice Devereaux had ordered the murder. Finally, Eva whispered, tears streaming. Finally, someone will believe me. The sound of vehicles approaching made them all turn. JB Devereaux arrived with private security, his friendly mask completely gone. That's Devereaux property, he announced. Everything in it belongs to my family. Diana stepped forward, badge raised. Jean-Baptiste Devereaux, you're under arrest for conspiracy to obstruct justice and intimidation of a federal witness. The murder evidence changed everything. JB's arrest opened investigations into the Devereaux family's continued criminal activities. Eva's testimony was finally taken seriously. Marcus formally relinquished all claims to the art. The finder's fees and family rewards totaled $73,000. Not enough to eliminate his debt, but enough to breathe. Dr. Kessler connected him with an education foundation offering grants for teachers returning to the profession. A structured debt repayment program. Not salvation, but survival. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his classroom teaching art restitution to high school students. Lily volunteered at a museum on weekends. Owen's nightmares had stopped. The letter from the Steiner family arrived on a Tuesday, inviting them to Vienna to see the portrait restored to its rightful place. Marcus accepted, not because it erased the debt or the struggle, but because some legacies were worth more than money. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. so you don't miss any upload from us.